The reading of my father's will lasted exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes to divide up $18 million. I know because I watched every tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, counting down as if the seconds themselves were mocking me. My name is Julian Cross, though the cross part has always carried an asterisk, a reminder that I've never truly belonged. On one side of the table sat Marcus, 35, already wearing father's Rolex as if the old man's body had been nothing more than a jewelry box. On the other, Damien, 32, too busy texting his wife about which mansion they'd move into first to notice the tension in the room. And then there was me, the illegitimate daughter, the secret no one was supposed to see, waiting for the moment my name would be read. That moment came, only it wasn't what anyone expected. "Juliana," said Attorney Samuel Graves, pulling out not a deed, not a portfolio, but a single brown envelope, bent at the corners, my name written across it in my father's dying hand. My brothers leaned in like vultures circling a carcass. The empire had been theirs. This envelope was supposed to be my consolation prize. What could possibly be inside? An apology? A final insult? Or something that would change everything? Marcus burst into laughter so loud he nearly spilled his drink. "An envelope? 2 decades of trying to be family, and you get paper?" Damien smirked. "Maybe it's a thank you card. Thanks for knowing your place." I didn't answer them. I just stared at the envelope, small enough to fit in a pocket, heavy enough to tilt the entire room. Samuel Graves handed me the envelope, his eyes flickering with something close to sympathy. It felt weightless in my hands, lighter than a bill, emptier than a promise. 28 years of clawing for recognition in this family, and it all came down to paper that barely weighed an ounce. "Gentlemen," Graves continued, ignoring the laughter echoing around the mahogany walls, "your father insisted I read this final statement." He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and delivered the words like a verdict. "Blood may determine birthright, but character determines worth. I trust each of you will receive exactly what you deserve." Marcus and Damien didn't hear the warning hidden inside those words. Too drunk on victory, they were already bickering over who would inherit father's corner office. I slipped the envelope into my jacket, stood without a word, and made for the door. "Hey, Juliana!" Marcus called after me, his voice dripping mockery. "If you're looking for work, I could get you a spot in building maintenance. You'd start in the basement, of course. Seems fitting. You've always been beneath us." Their laughter followed me through the marble foyer, past the oil portraits of crossmen who never once acknowledged my existence, and out into the October air. My 10-year-old Honda sat between their Maseratis like the punchline to a cruel joke. I slid behind the wheel, the engine silent, the envelope burning in my pocket. Inside was a bank account number and 11 words that would unravel 25 years of lies, but I didn't know that yet. All I knew was this: I was finished begging for scraps at their table. As I stared at my father's handwriting, shaky and fading, I wondered, had he saved his final insult for last, or his final secret? I'd spent my life as the family's shadow, never their daughter. From the moment I could understand language, I understood rejection. Different, lesser, tolerated, but never wanted. My earliest memory is of Marcus, 10 years old, smirking as he told his prep school friends why I lived in their house. "That's Juliana, Dad's mistake. We keep her around because Dad feels guilty, and guilt was all I ever inherited." My mother, Elena Ruiz, died when I was 3. They called it an accident, brake failure on the Long Island Expressway. Tragic but simple. She had been Richard's secretary for 5 years, and their affair produced me, the evidence of his one lapse in control. His wife had already died of cancer before I was born. So when Elena was buried, Richard didn't take me in out of love. He took me in out of obligation, and I grew up inside a house of marble and glass, a ghost in plain sight. The Cross estate in Westchester stretched across 32 rooms of cold marble and colder expectations. Marcus and Damien had their names carved into brass plates on their bedroom doors. Mine? A plain plaque that read, Guest Room 3. Even the walls whispered that I didn't belong. At dinner, the seating chart said it all. Richard would sit at the head, Marcus and Damien flanking him like princes awaiting the crown. Their conversations flowed easily. Princeton, company internships, market forecasts. When his gaze finally landed on me, it was only to ask if I needed anything for school. My answer was always the same. No, sir. Even when I did. Especially when I did. Marcus was blunt in his cruelty, but Damien had a surgeon's touch. He'd invite me along with his friends, only to remind me why I wasn't allowed to participate. Juliana can't come to the country club, guys. They actually require legitimate members. Or my personal favorite, Juliana understands why she can't be in the family photos. Investors don't like confusion. So, I adapted. Survival meant usefulness. Marcus needed his college essays written. I delivered. Damien crashed the Mercedes. I took the blame. Richard needed someone to work 18-hour days at the company with no credit. I was already at the office. I spoke the language of servitude fluently, convinced that if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, maybe one day he'd look at me the way he looked at them. He never did. At Cross Industries board meetings, I was introduced as Richard's special project. At charity galas, I was the young woman Richard mentors. Never daughter, never family. I held coats while they smiled for photographs. I stood 3 feet away, listening as he boasted about his 2 boys, invisible even in the spotlight. And here's the cruel twist. I outperformed them both. While Marcus and Damien stumbled through Ivy League degrees they barely earned, I clawed my way into MIT on merit. While they staggered into boardrooms half-drunk, I built my own consulting firm by 25, closing 6-figure contracts with Fortune 500 clients who wouldn't even let Marcus past reception. But in the Cross family, achievement couldn't rewrite bloodlines. Richard once told me, "You can't make yourself legitimate through success." That was the closest he ever came to acknowledging what I was. As his health declined, no doctor or private clinic could reverse the clock. And suddenly, Marcus and Damien were circling like sharks, drawn back to the scent of inheritance. They visited more often, soaking up his stories, rehearsing their future as heirs. At dinners, they openly debated which properties they'd keep, which they'd sell, and what scraps I might be left with. "What do you think Juliana will get?" I once overheard Damien's wife, Clara, ask with a laugh. "Whatever it is," Damien replied without even lowering his voice. "It won't be worth her time." And in that moment, I understood. I had spent my life chasing affection from a man who didn't have love to give, not to them, not to me, not to anyone. The will was set for Friday at 2 p.m. sharp. The stage was already set for betrayal. I pulled up to the Cross estate 15 minutes early. My dented Honda parked behind a catering truck, unloading crates of champagne. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd arrived in silence, while Marcus and Damien had already begun celebrating, confident enough in their inheritance to hire party planners before the will was even read. "Come to watch the real heirs inherit?" Marcus sneered as I stepped inside. "Just here for the reading," I replied, slipping into the same corner chair I'd always been assigned at family gatherings, present but never included. Damien didn't bother to look up from his phone. Smart to manage expectations, he muttered. Though I am curious what Dad left you. My money's on that broken Rolex he never fixed. Seems poetic, giving the broken daughter the broken watch. Attorney Samuel Graves cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the room like a judge delivering a sentence. The last will and testament of Richard Edmund Cross, executed 3 months prior to his death, superseding all previous documents. The first 10 minutes played out exactly as expected. Marcus inherited the Manhattan real estate portfolio, $8 million in prime properties generating nearly $1 million a month. Damien claimed the Hampton estate, the yacht fleet, and the fleet of luxury cars, including a Ferrari he thought nobody knew about. Their wives, Clara and Simone, were already planning their new lives. Simone texting friends about a party at the Met, Clara browsing yacht slips in Monaco. Then came the silence. Juliana, Graves finally read. The room froze. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single brown envelope, the corners creased from too many hands. My name was written across it in my father's shaky handwriting. A coupon, maybe? Simone quipped, joining the laughter. 10% off your next therapy session for daddy issues. Or directions to the nearest homeless shelter? Clara added. Graves placed the envelope in front of me without meeting my eyes. It felt impossibly light, like holding air. 28 years in this family, and my entire inheritance weighed less than a birthday card. Lady and gentlemen, Graves continued, your father insisted I read this final phrase. He adjusted his glasses, his voice heavy. Blood may determine birthright, but character determines worth. I trust each of you will receive exactly what you deserve. My brothers missed the sting. Too drunk on victory, they were already arguing over office space. I slid the envelope into my pocket and rose to leave. Hey, Juliana, Marcus called after me. When you open that, let us know if it's at least good paper. Maybe you can frame it in your studio apartment. Their laughter chased me through the marble halls, past portraits of crossmen who'd never claimed me, and out into the crisp October air. Through the estate windows, I caught glimpses of the party beginning. Shadows raising glasses to toast their good fortune. I stared at the paper again. The child who was never meant to exist. The words echoed through me, louder than their laughter, sharper than Marcus's jabs. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the envelope slipping from my fingers, floating to the floor like a dead leaf. For a long time, I just sat there, lights off, phone silent. My apartment suddenly felt colder, emptier, like the note had stripped away even the illusion of dignity I'd been clinging to. Was this it? Was this really the legacy my mother died for? A sentence so cruel, it could have been carved into my bones? For the first time in years, I felt nothing but exhaustion. Not anger, not even grief, just emptiness. The kind that makes you wonder if the world would notice if you disappeared. I thought about throwing the envelope away, about deleting the bank login, blocking Graves's number, walking out into the city and becoming no one. What if this was all I ever was? A ghost in the corner of family photos. The unpaid intern to an empire I'd helped hold together. The mistake they tolerated for sport. I buried my face in my hands. And for the first time since I was a child, I cried, not quietly, not strategically, but like someone who had just realized that the people she loved had never loved him back, and maybe never could. It could have ended there. Maybe in another life it would have. But as the tears dried, my eyes caught the envelope again. The weight of it, the age of the paper, and something strange happened. Curiosity survived the collapse. I reached for the envelope one more time, and this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A second line, scribbled almost imperceptibly beneath the first. Your mother knew why. I drove back to my apartment in Brooklyn, my mind spiraling. Maybe the envelope contained a token, one last symbolic insult. $100 perhaps, to match the 100 ways he'd denied me. Or maybe it was nothing at all, a closed account, one final joke from beyond the grave. But then my eyes caught the last part of his note. Your mother knew why. The apartment was silent, but I could still hear her. Not her voice exactly, more the way it used to fill a room. Soft, low, confident, like she knew something no one else did. I was 3 when she died, but memory has its own strange rules. It doesn't always remember the face, but it remembers the feeling. I remember cinnamon. She used to keep cinnamon gum in her purse, the kind that burned your tongue but made you feel grown up if she let you have a piece. I remember the smell of her hair when she picked me up, lavender and something chemical, maybe hairspray. I remember her humming at night, not a lullaby exactly, but a melody that made the dark feel smaller. And once, just once, I remember her kneeling beside me, her hand on my cheek, and saying something I didn't understand until now. You are not your father's silence. I never forgot that, even when I didn't know what it meant. But maybe she did. Maybe she knew how this would all end and left me that line like a lifeboat. And now here I was, nearly 3 decades later, staring at a single phrase in my father's dying hand. Your mother knew why. It wasn't just grief anymore. It wasn't just anger. It was something else. Like a thread had finally been pulled taut, and for the first time, I was ready to follow it. The words stopped me cold. I'd never questioned her death. A car accident when I was 3. Tragic, yes, but simple, or so I'd believed. I pulled up the New York State accident database. After some searching, there it was, October 15th, 1999. The report ended with a single chilling note. Investigation terminated at family's request. Attached to the authorization was one signature, Richard Cross. My father hadn't just ignored my mother's death. He had shut down the investigation. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling, and dialed Graves. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for my call. Juliana. Samuel Graves's voice on the other end was calm, measured, like he'd been rehearsing for this moment. I assume you've opened it. My throat tightened. What the hell is this, Graves? What did Richard know about my mother's death? Silence. Long enough that I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. I turned back to the banking website, my pulse so loud it drowned the room. The dashboard loaded like molasses, every second stretching into an hour. And then the numbers appeared. I blinked, refreshed the page. Once, twice, a third time, but the number never changed. $127 million. The phone rang again, an unknown international number. I answered, my voice breaking. Miss Cross? A man's voice, precise and heavy with a German accent. This is Heinrich Dürer. I trust you're seeing the balance. This can't be real, I whispered, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. There's been some mistake. There is no mistake, Dürer replied. That account has been accumulating since the day you were born. Every dollar stolen, every crime committed, your father matched it in your name. But you should know, your mother was not who you believed her to be. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. What are you talking about? She was just his secretary. They had an affair. The affair was real, Durer said gently. But Elena Ruiz was no ordinary woman. She was Senior Special Agent Elena Ruiz, FBI Financial Crimes Division. She was embedded inside Cross Industries, building a 3-year case against your father's empire, until the night she died. My chest collapsed. I bent forward, head between my knees, fighting the spin of the room. That's impossible, I muttered. If he loved her, if he loved me, why did he treat us like we didn't exist? Because he had to protect you, Durer said. Your brothers, Marcus and Damien, were already being groomed to take over the criminal enterprise. 13 and 10, raised to see threats and eliminate them. Victor discovered what they had done. But by then, it was too late. The words tore through me like glass. So he covered it up, I said bitterly. He chose to hide their crime. He chose to protect the only innocent life in the equation, Durer corrected softly. He made a deal with the Bureau. Your mother's evidence, financial records, coded transfers, offshore accounts, it was enough to destroy everything. In exchange, he would continue running the empire while secretly feeding information to the FBI. And every time your brothers stole $1, he siphoned a matching amount into your account. Their fortune is blood money. Yours is clean. I stood, pacing my apartment, 28 years of lies unraveling in the span of minutes. There's more, Durer said. Check your secure messages. I clicked the tab. Hundreds of files appeared. Spreadsheets, photographs, voice recordings, surveillance logs, evidence of fraud, money laundering, bribes, crimes that stretched across decades. Durer's voice cut through the static in my head. You have 2 choices, Miss Cross. You can walk away with your fortune, or you can deliver justice. The evidence is all there, admissible, incontrovertible. The decision is yours. I stared at the files until the words blurred, finally understanding what Richard's last message meant. Character determines worth. It hadn't been mockery. It had been judgment, on Marcus, on Damien, and on me. For 3 days, I sat with it. Not just the files, the weight, the silence, the money. $127 million and the power to end an empire. Or walk away and let it rot from the inside. The thought of choosing still felt absurd, like being handed the keys to a prison and told I could stay or leave. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just watched. I watched Marcus and Damien post yacht photos with captions like "Legacy Baby." I watched Clara model gowns at a charity gala, wearing a necklace that once belonged to my mother. I watched Simone pop champagne in front of the Manhattan skyline, tagging luxury brands that had no idea the money behind her smile was soaked in blood. I sat there in the dark, files open on one screen, their lives flashing on the other. Every photo was a taunt. Every like and comment another reminder that they believed they'd won. I could disappear. I had the resources. New name, new passport, new country. I could be done with them forever. But then I visited her grave. Elena Ruiz, beloved mother, taken too soon. The headstone was simple, almost insultingly so. The grass was overgrown, the plot forgotten, untended. No cross-family visits, no flowers, just me, and a wind that cut colder than October should have allowed. I knelt and ran my fingers across her name. Did you know? I asked aloud. Did you know it would come down to this? I waited for nothing. I knew she was gone, but in that silence, I could still hear her voice. You are not your father's silence. So I stood. I drove home. I opened the files, and I made my choice. The practical voice in my head told me to take the money, disappear, live a life free from their shadows. But another voice, the one I had tried to bury all my life, refused to be silent. So I chose. I built 2 packages. The first went to the FBI. Every file, every recording, every document my father had smuggled into that account. Proof of decades of crime, sealed tight and admissible in court. The second went to Samuel Graves, with specific instructions. Deliver it to my brothers at exactly 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the same hour they'd laughed at my envelope. By Monday night, I was on a one-way flight to Zurich. By Tuesday afternoon, the arrests had begun. Within hours, every asset was frozen. The mansions, the yachts, the cars, all seized by federal authorities. Clara was caught at JFK with jewelry stuffed into her luggage. Simone was arrested at the yacht club, still trying to register vessels that no longer belonged to her. At 2 o'clock sharp, Graves slid a final note across the table to my brothers. The same aged stationery my father had used for me. The message was simple. Character determines worth. Enjoy what you deserve. The child who was never meant to exist. And just like that, the empire they had inherited collapsed into dust. Meanwhile, the account Richard had built for me only grew. Heinrich Dürer still manages it, and each year on the anniversary of my mother's death, he calls with the same question. Will you claim it this year, Miss Cross? And each year, I give the same answer, no, because I finally understood the truth. The real inheritance wasn't money. It wasn't evidence. It wasn't even the truth itself. It was freedom. Freedom to define my own worth. To walk away from a legacy built on greed and blood, and to choose a life that belonged only to me. Marcus and Damien never had that choice. They were born into the empire, chained to it until it destroyed them. But I, the mistake, the shadow, the child who wasn't supposed to exist, was free. Free to exist however I chose. And here's the truth no one in that marble mansion ever understood. Once you stop waiting for recognition, once you stop begging for scraps, you realize you already have enough. So I'll leave you with this. If you were in my place, if the choice was yours, would you have taken the money, or would you have walked away? A month later, I returned to Westchester one final time. Not to the mansion, not to the boardroom, but to the cemetery at the edge of town, where the wind always seemed to carry secrets. I brought 2 things with me, the envelope and the note. My father's final words, now folded and weathered from weeks in my coat pocket. The child who was never meant to exist. I stood in front of her grave again. No ceremony, no crowd. Just me and the truth. I lit a match. The envelope burned slow, curling in on itself like it was trying to hide its own shame. I let the flame consume it completely, then scattered the ash across the grass at my mother's feet. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. Because the truth is, I didn't need the empire. I didn't need the name. I didn't even need the money. I needed to know that the silence wasn't mine to carry anymore. And now, it wasn't. So I turned away and walked back to the car. No title, no inheritance, no legacy, just freedom. And that was enough.